this fly is called the Straggle Stone, and this is another pattern that Umpqua picked up. It's in their catalog this year. And especially when the water is just a little bit off color and you want a stonefly pattern, this is a really good one for me because it's got a little bit of flash in it. So I'm going to start with some rubber legs here, and I'm just going to use some Spanflex. I like Spanflex or just this spandex type rubber leg material more than standard rubber because it can sit in your box for a while and it doesn't dry rot. So I can have these in my box for a couple years and it still works, whereas if you have more standard rubber, all of a sudden you have a fly that has no legs anymore when you pull it out of the box sometimes, and you have little fibers sitting in the bottom of your box. So I took the rubber leg and I trimmed it into a bunch of pieces like this, maybe, I don't know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. I used to hate tying with rubber legs, and then I realized, why am I leaving the leg intact? The hard part about tying with a rubber leg is that it's moving it around while you're, trying to wrap the thread. But if you just trim it, I don't care if I waste a 1/4 inch of rubber leg, right? It's not the end of the world. And so by not having a whole big part of waste there that you have to work around, rubber legs are a lot easier now. So get it short, use a pinch wrap, and I usually tie on the far side of the fly first. These are going to be the tails. So pinch it on the far side, put 2 wraps, pull that around, put that on the near side, and put a wrap or 2 over the top. And it's a little bit off kilter, so I'm going to fix it with an additional wrap there, and now I have my tails in. All right, I'm going to wrap forward and get some brassy sized copper wire. If it wants to come off the spool here for me. There we go. And go ahead and tie that in, and then the next step, we're going to add our shell back and wing case. And you can use fino skin for it, skinny skin, thin skin, any of the skins. And you want to trim it maybe 1/8 of an inch thick, in between 1/8 and 1/4 probably, thicker for larger flies. Then with this material you got a paper back you got to cut, so when I cut it, I always cut it with a bevel on both sides, and now that makes it easier to remove that paper backing and also gives me an angled tie-in point. And then most of these types of materials have a matte side and a glossy side a lot of times, so find the glossy side and tie it in with that facing down.
10 o'clock on the casting pond, 10 o'clock Eddie Robinson.
And that way when you fold it back over, the glossy side will actually be up. Now, what I'm doing here, I want to wrap that thread back to where it's flush with the legs, but unless you lift it up and look, sometimes it's hard to see whether you've gotten all the way back. So I make sure I wrap it all the way back. Then I'm taking some Semperfli straggle string here, and I can't remember which color this is, and for some reason they don't have them labeled on this card, but it's somewhere around a mustard or a lichen. I can't remember which one they label it. And then I'm going to tie this in. Another material you could use is some micro UV polar chenille, but micro UV polar chenille is better for larger size versions of this fly. It's a little bit thicker braid and a little more bulbous material, so it'll make a more heavily dressed body. And one thing you can do on this fly, which I didn't do, is put in a lead underbody, especially if you want to get it a little bit fat. This is going to end up being really skinny without any lead underneath. So you can do that, or you can use a much fatter thread and just build up a thread body underneath if you don't need the extra weight. But today it's going to be a skinny stone. It's going to be the Gumby stone here. All right. So then I'm going to use the rotary function again and wrap this body. The other thing you can do is just kind of go back and forth to build up some extra. If you make a pass forward or a pass back and then a pass forward, now you have a nice abdomen there. And I'm going to pull that shell back over. Crank it down. Pull my wire through, and with this material, if you aren't careful, you can trap a lot of the fibers with the wire, so I'm going to waggle it through so I make sure that I don't trap any more than necessary. It's just kind of like using wire to tie down hackle on a woolly bugger. You got to waggle it through so you don't trap all those fibers. All right, so then I pull that skinny skin back again, fold it back, and then it's going to be my wing case as well. And I have these two pre-trimmed legs sitting over here. And a lot of times these legs tend to have a little bit of curvature. They're not real straight. So just make sure that if they're like that, the curve faces out away from the fly. Otherwise the legs are going to fold in towards the body instead of out away from it. And if you don't get the legs placed perfectly from the beginning, that's okay. You can always use some materials to make them angle any way you want afterward. And on this one, on the near side, I just use my thumb to trap it against the body of the fly to hold it there while I wrap. On this side, I'm going to use my index finger to do the same thing, do a pinch wrap while I'm at it. And then make sure I line it up. So that one went underneath. So line it up right on the lateral side of the fly. Okay. Now, when I do this in a steelhead version, which I call the Magneto Stone, or you can do it in dirty water too, and it really shows up well. I'll do a black abdomen and a purple thorax, or the reverse. I'll do a purple abdomen and a black thorax, and then a pink bead. But with this, since we're actually sort of quasi-imitating a golden stone here, I'm just going to leave it the same material for the thorax. And if you'll do a darker shell back with a lighter straggle string, you'll get a two-toned effect. And if you go out and seine the river and find some golden stones right now, most of them that you'll find are much darker on their dorsal side than their ventral side. So then just wrap it until you have a little bit bigger thorax than you had your abdomen. And what I could have done there too, it looks like my rear legs are sitting a little more flush towards the body. If that happens, you can put a wrap of that straggle string behind them first to prop them out. It'll be okay. But they could have been a little bit more perpendicular to the fly if I'd done that. And pull that over for your wing case. And with these inverted beads, you kind of have to come in at an angle instead of straight down to get it to sit against the back of it. Make sure you don't trap that. And then the hardest part about this fly at the end is getting it clean with all those fibers not showing from the straggle string, because they tend to get trapped under that last couple of thread wraps. So you either have to stroke them really well like that, and sometimes there'll still be some stragglers. I've got one on the near side that's just really stubborn, so you can use a fingernail to get it back and trap it. Okay. And then the other thing you can do if you wanted to clean this up just a little bit, you could put a couple of wraps of dubbing there just as a collar, and that'd hide all that. But most of the time, I don't care, because the fish don't see it, or if they do, they don't care either.
In the fly tying feeder, right now we have Nate Brumley, voicing out of advanced dry fly fishing.
That's the end.
Dry fly innovation, stop by. He's got a lot of good things to say.
So there's your Straggle Stone. All you got to do now is just trim their legs, and you're good to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed the Euro Nymphs today, and most of these I have YouTube videos on, so you can always go and get them later. But feel free to send me an email and ask questions if you have them. Enjoy the rest of the expo, guys.
I like that.